What's up, Valorant fans? Thanks so much for joining us here today for another video. My name is Smiley, and today we're going to be talking about the rise and fall of Sentinels, an absolute powerhouse in the Valorant scene who achieved pretty much everything there is to achieve. But where did it all go wrong? Find out in just a moment. So for those of you who aren't aware, Valorant, of course, does have a professional scene, and Sentinels was one of the first organizations to announce their roster very early on. They actually announced their roster end of April of 2020, and they finalized their roster on June 1st. Let's meet the team. So here we have the original roster for Valorant as announced by Sentinels. From left to right, we have Shazam, the in-game leader. This is the guy who's making all the calls, the brains of the operation, if you will. Next across, we have Dapper. He is the Sentinel / defensive expert. Great fundamentals, solid gameplay. He's a bit of a trash talker. He likes getting in people's heads, and every team needs that. Next in the middle, we have Sinatra. He came from the Overwatch League, having just won the Overwatch Grand Finals and the Overwatch League MVP. Mechanically gifted player. To the right of him, we have Sick, who is an absolute clutch master. I mean, Sick is the type of guy that it'll be a 1v4 and you go, you know what, Sick, he's got a shot. He could clutch this. The absolute, I mean, just ice in his veins. And then to the farthest right, we have Zoms. He is the controller smoker player. He's kind of the heart of the team. Without him performing to the best of his abilities, the rest of the team is going to have a hard time performing. But when he's on point, he just enables everybody else on the team to really perform at their best. These guys were a complete team, and it showed in their results. They dominated everything from the start. Let's go through some of their accomplishments that they have together. Now, real quick, before we get into what they accomplished together as a team, it's important to understand the way tournaments work at the professional Valorant level. So there are 4 different stages, if you will, in a given year, in a calendar year. It's stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, and each one is its own section of tournaments. So what ends up happening is you can see here on the screen, stage 1 is from January to March, stage 2 is from March to May, stage 3 is from June to September. Last chance qualifier is for the last tournament. So understand that each of these sections are playing for the next tournament. So the first stage 1 is Valorant Challengers. This is for each region. So each region, North America, Europe, Latin America, Asia, will have their own regional challengers tournament where everybody goes head to head, and whoever comes out on top then goes on to play at the international tournament, which is the Valorant Masters. So when they first started competing as a team, there weren't any official tournaments yet. That stages format I covered earlier actually didn't apply, like I said, until 2021. So in 2020, there were a lot of invitational tournaments. They ended up doing pretty good, definitely got some earnings. They ended up winning in 2021, February of 2021. They ended up winning the North America Stage 1 Challengers, which is the regional tournament. And they ended up winning North America Stage 1 Masters against FaZe Clan. So these guys were at the top about as early as you can possibly get. At this point, though, there was a slight shift in the roster for Sentinels. In March of 2021, a previous partner of Sinatra came out with allegations against the star player, which immediately saw him receded to the bench. With their star player no longer available, Sentinels needed to find someone to fill in for his place, and quickly. For better or for worse, the stage was set for the arrival of TenZ. Tyson Engo, better known as TenZ, was actually a player for C9. What ended up happening was he was a competitor for C9. He ended up wanting to take a break, so he ended up being just a content creator for C9. And when Sentinels came calling, he jumped at the opportunity to play with them. Now, this is crazy because TenZ is widely considered to be the best player in the world. So you go from having one of the best players in the world to signing with one of the best teams in the world. For anybody who's like an NBA fan, this is like Kevin Durant going to the Golden State Warriors. The best just got better. So with TenZ now on the roster, this team was ready to compete and establish themselves and reinforce to the world that they were the best. TenZ is incredibly gifted mechanically. I mean, he was the spearhead for this updated Sentinels roster. He would just press the W key and just obliterate everything in his path. His playstyle enabled his team to perform even better. He created all kinds of space for the team to be able to work and create their own value. I mean, this guy just elevated this team to a whole nother level. What really set apart the Sentinels team from the rest of the competition was the players' individual ability to make plays and win rounds. Anytime one player fell short, another player would step in to make up for any lost ground. Now, while looking to Sick as the most consistent player in tight situations, the clutches could come from anyone on this team at any point in time. Sentinels games were a showcase of hero play after hero play after hero play, highlighted by teammates who set one another up for success in spectacular and dominating fashion. There was a point in time where their performances were so convincing and so consistent that every other team in the world understood that they were playing against each other for nothing more than the right to face Sentinels. Another contributing factor to the success that Sentinels had was their ability to convert eco rounds against a full buy. What does that mean exactly? So basically, when you cannot afford to buy full loadouts, which is rifles and armor, you essentially will try to save some cash so you can buy those guns and armor the next round. So you'll end up having a weaker buy against the other team when they're full buying. Winning those rounds are tremendous for the cash that you get, but more importantly, it is absolutely backbreaking for the other team to lose against you when you have worse guns and worse armor. Sentinels were so consistent in winning eco rounds that not only is it getting their economy back into a good, healthy state, but it is absolutely destroying the mental of their opponents when they're consistently getting beaten by guys with pistols. This team of juggernauts won the first ever international LAN tournament at Masters 2 in Reykjavik, Iceland, without dropping a single map, and capping off their incredible run with a masterclass performance against Fnatic, winning the final game with a score of 3-0. This team looked set to dominate the pro Valorant scene for a very long time. But then what happened? Well, Sentinels did begin their Stage 3 campaign right where they left off in Stage 2, blazing through all their qualifiers in the Challenger stage and capped off their run with a convincing 3-1 win over 100 Thieves in the regional final, solidifying their spot as the #1 seed from NA in the Masters 3 tournament in Berlin. Sentinels then advanced through the group stage, but not without suffering their first ever tournament loss to G2. While perceived as a minor incident at the time, this defeat was the first symptom of the eventual demise of Sentinels, as they went crashing out of Masters 3 the very next game in a lackluster defeat against an inspired Team Envy. Well, no big deal if you ask Sentinels fans at the time. I mean, Sentinels had already won a Masters tournament that year, and besides, they were already qualified for the biggest tournament of the year, Valorant Champions. Interestingly enough, Sentinels decided to hire a coach for this tournament, as they had been without a coach up until this point, and all Sentinels fans were ready to see their team reach the peak of glory once again. Sentinels did not even make it out of their own group this time, losing to both Team Liquid and Crew Esports and nearly choking against Furia. For a team who started off 2021 in such dominant fashion, to simply be booted from the subsequent tournaments in very humiliating fashion, the question then is, where did it all go wrong for Sentinels in 2021? While there were many different factors that may have contributed, one of the important things to look at was that although Sen was an absolute powerhouse of a team early on, they were missing one key component that nearly every other team had: a coach. This Sentinels team was effectively coaching themselves for the entirety of their existence, and with the results they achieved early on, it's easy to understand why the organization saw no need to make any changes. Most of the strategies and play calling was overseen by Shazam, who had more than earned the right to take charge of that aspect of the team. However, as new agents were being released and changes to the meta were becoming more frequent, it's quite likely that the strain of adapting his team's strategy and game plan while also fulfilling his role as a player may have impacted the effectiveness of both roles that Shazam was trying to fill. I personally believe the answer is rather simple. Sentinels are the exact same team today that they were a year ago, and the rest of the world has simply caught up to them. There hasn't been any real changes in their playstyle, although they have had to move players around to different agents. Sometimes they even look uncomfortable on these new agents that they must switch over to in order to keep up with the meta. For example, Shazam, the in-game leader, he has one of the best operators in the game. For those who don't know, the operator is the sniper. It's a one shot to the body. It's a very powerful weapon, but in pro play, it's really only used by one agent, Jet. Because of her abilities. Without getting too in depth on what each player does, Jet is one of the better agents to be a sniper because of her kit allowing her more mobility. So what happened was they would play Shazam on the Jet just so he could use the operator, and man, did he perform well. What ends up happening though is Jet is such a strong player, they actually want to put their star duelist on the Jet. So you put TenZ on the Jet. TenZ also has a nice operator, but what that does, that shifts Shazam from a comfort pick with the op of Jet over to this guy, Sova. Sova can't really safely play the op, and Sentinels are really feeling the effects of having their in-game leader who would set the tempo with his op. It's gone. It's missing. He can't use it. He can't play it. That was a absolute crucial pillar of the vintage Sentinels roster, was Shazam on that op. They can't play him on that anymore because of the shift in the meta. Another agent change that the Sentinels have had to deal with was Sick. Sick is the duelist. He's actually a second duelist, more of a flex pick. So any maps that Sentinels want to run two duelists on, he would be the second duelist. Otherwise, he'll flex into another pick. Sick was arguably the best Phoenix in the world, but Phoenix has fallen so far from the meta. You're never going to see a Phoenix in current play, so he would shift over to the Sage. He's a really great Sage, but on maps that Sage is not being called upon, he's having to play this agent, Sky. People are saying it's called Sky Prison. He's having to play this agent, which is not necessarily his best agent. His best agents are these two, but he doesn't really get to play these two. But he has to play this Sky. Otherwise, if he doesn't conform to the meta, if they don't adapt their strategies to the meta, they're going to lose to the teams who do. That doesn't help them. And of course, the conversation about hero pools wouldn't be complete without TenZ. Again, TenZ is widely regarded by many as the best player in the world. But for better or for worse, he has been almost exclusively relegated to playing Jet, which is a shame because he is one of the most fun Reynas to watch in pro play. But you're not going to see him play Reyna anytime soon. She's out of the meta. We haven't seen her for a long time. If you want to see him play Reyna, you got to go dig up some of his old YouTube highlights, which I highly recommend. It's a lot of fun to watch. But in about 90% of the games you're going to watch with TenZ, he's going to be on the Jet. The only time he's not going to be on Jet is when he plays on the Raze. And that's going to be on one, maybe two maps at this point in time. Why is that a problem? It's a problem for Sentinels because other teams only need to prepare for TenZ to either be on the Jet or the Raze. It's a lot less homework they have to do, and frankly, it gives them a lot more options as far as how to figure out a way to stop TenZ. I mean, at the end of the day, TenZ is the heart of the team. I mean, he goes in and he just kills everything. He just opens the map up completely for his team to walk in and do their job. But if he doesn't do that, you will see Sentinels as a completely different team in a game when he can't compete. I mean, like I said, he's the heart. If you stop the heart, everybody around him crumbles. If you go back and watch games where TenZ is struggling, you'll see a very uninspired Sentinels team. And this is tough because before, TenZ would just be unstoppable on any one of these agents on your screen. What I personally find very interesting is over the last year, other organizations have had significant roster changes, management changes, team changes, and Sentinels has, as a core, remained unchanged for the most part. Now, they did hire a coach before Champions who was subsequently let go, but other than that, the pieces have not really changed for Sentinels. Unfortunately for you Sentinels fans out there, the news doesn't get much better. Stage 1 of 2022 has seen the Sentinels lose out to top contenders such as Optic in version 1, while only barely scraping by teams they would have thrashed a year ago. Unfortunately, Sentinels has officially been eliminated after back-to-back losses to the Guard in version 1 in the playoffs, and it looks like that's curtains until Stage 2 for the Sentinels. For a team whose core has remained largely unchanged, a lot of questions need to be answered. Is it finally time to change up the roster? Does the organization need to hire a permanent head coach to assist with the game planning and strategies? Will they ever reach the top again, or are their glory days officially behind them? What would you do in order to get the team back to their winning ways? Let me know in the comments down below. Although we might not be seeing the Sentinels in the server anytime soon, it's going to be very interesting to see what direction this organization decides to go in, and for sure when they're back in the servers, it's going to be must-watch Valorant. As always, I'm Smiley. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.